the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of the Queens, Deir el-Medina, the cemetery of Sheikh Abdul Gorna, Gornet Marai, Al-Asasif, El-Khocha, and El-Tarif. All these places form the largest and the most important assemblage of private tombs in the Theban cemetery. We have very little knowledge about Thebes during the Old Kingdom era, as it was mentioned rarely for being one of the towns of the fourth nome in Upper Egypt. Its name had the symbol of just a scepter and was known as Waset until the Middle Kingdom. Then Waset became the name of the whole nome. In the New Kingdom, she became the lady who holds the bow and the arrow, with a scepter above her head. This embodiment was called Waset the Victorious, and also the Victorious City. Starting from the Middle Kingdom, it was also known as Uno Shima, which means the southern city of Uno, to differentiate between it and Heliopolis in Cairo. They were the Greeks who called this city Thebes, maybe because it resembles their city, which is called the same. Gardner thinks it refers to the word Ta'ibet, which means harem. In the 9th century BC, Homerus was the first to mention the name Thebes in his Odyssey, for he said, "Thebes of the rich houses and the 100 gates," and hence it was known as the city of the 100 gates. That's because of its big number of great pylons and lofty gates. The Greeks also called it the great city of Zeus, after equating between Ammon and their greatest god Zeus. But the name was confined to the east bank of Thebes only. As for the western residential areas, they were called Memnonia. The Romans had a different view. They called it Diospolis Magna, which means the great city of Zeus, in addition to the name Metropolis. When the Arabs entered Egypt after the Romans, they called it Luxor, which means the city of palaces, after being fascinated by its great temples that resemble the palaces. Today, both names are famous, and are both used, Luxor and Thebes.
From the moment the teenage musician caught sight of the organ in France's most famous cathedral, he knew where he wanted to play. In the 5 decades since Philippe Lefebvre has traveled the world to play what he describes as an orchestra one, but the organ master returns to the loft above Notre Dame Cathedral and is never disappointed. He has none of the infamy of Notre Dame's bell ringer and is invisible to thousands of visitors Notre Dame receives each day. But Lefebvre says he never misses the direct contacts with his audience that so many musicians crave. For the 64-year-old, it is enough to be a caretaker of what he considers an almost otherworldly instrument. He first saw it when he was 15 as a young piano student. A few visitors may notice the biggest pipes above the entrance, but most turn their eyes no higher than the stained glass windows along the sides. Lefebvre, when he plays, is hidden even further behind a brand new wooden paneled control board that he compares to a cockpit. A century ago, 6 strong men were needed to pump enough air for the music. Now, there is an air compressor behind the scenes, and the newly rebuilt instrument itself has a touchscreen panel that can note favorite stop combinations like a browser bookmarks a web page. Despite the advances in organ technology, Lefebvre feels the weight of history in his job. There are deep gashes in the wood carvings of the organ loft, a legacy of revolutionaries from the late 19th century who slashed away the fleur-de-lis symbol of the monarchy. Each of the nearly 8,000 pipes, some of which date back to the 18th century, was individually cleaned and returned to its place. The new electronic panel, 5 cascading keyboards, and more than 200 stops were installed. In carnivorous Notre Dame, the organ's location is unparalleled. While Lefebvre plays the opening of the piece heroic, a few tourists turn towards the sign. By the end of the grandiose piece, the wooden floor of the loft is vibrating and Notre Dame's surge, arcing ceiling echoes with the sound. The big organ is played on weekends and for major ceremonies and holidays, the playing shared by 3 organists who have held the job since 1985.